As we begin Sefer Vayikra, sometimes we're overwhelmed with all the different details of all of the karbanos, but it really is an opportunity to reflect on each karban that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. Each one plays a specific role. And unfortunately, without a Beis Mikdash, we don't have the opportunity to bring each of those karbanos. But as Chazal tell us, learning about the karbanos is as if we brought them, and each of them plays a critical role in our avodas Hashem. One of the karbanos that stands out and is difficult to understand exactly what its role is a korban shlamim. When is a korban shlamim brought? What is the role of a korban shlamim? You see, many karbanos are brought in order to bring kapara, in order to atone. Is there any element of atonement for the korban shlamim? What is the korban shlamim about? So Rashi tells us that it's called the korban shlamim, shematilim shalom ba'olam. The shoresh is shalom, is peace, that it brings peace in the world. What does that mean, that it brings peace in the world? It would sound like it's not about kapara, it's not about atonement, but it's about creating a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that itself would be a beautiful idea, that there is a korban that is not about atonement, and that it's simply about bringing us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, there are indications that the korban shlamim has an element of kapara. Rashi tells us, and we have this in other places as well, that the korban shlamim is a mechaper, brings us for kapara, for a mitzvah asay. If we have a positive commandment that we were supposed to do and we didn't do it, then we are supposed to bring a korban shlamim in order to bring us kapara. So there's an element of kapara. Why does Rashi tell us about this? Why is it different than any other korban in which there is a explicit role to the kapara? Why is it about being matil shalom? And worse, or different, is typically we have a rule that when we do vidoy, when we put our hands on the korban and we do vidoy on the korban, we declare what the sin is and we admit whatever it is that we did in order that the korban should bring us kapara. If there's an element of kapara in the korban shlamim, then we would think that we would find that there would be vidoy as well. And yet, the Gemara describes that misvada achatos avon chatos val asham avon asham. That on chatos you atone, you admit the sin which brought you to the bringing of the korban chatos, and an asham for an asham. But it doesn't tell us anything about the shlamim. In fact, the Rambam paskins explicitly that you do vidoy on the karbanos in which you're bringing kapara, and he writes v'yeira ali she'enam mizvada ala shlamim, that you don't do vidoy on the korban shlamim. So if the korban shlamim is about kapara for the essay, then why don't we bring it? And yet at the same time, the name seems to indicate that it's not about kapara. So what exactly is it? So there's an interesting line in Tosfos, in Maseches Arachim, where Tosfos says, well, it is mechaper, but it doesn't come to kapara completely. It's not mechaper kulei. It's not mechaper so much. It's not mechaper so much. It doesn't bring so much atonement. Isn't atonement all or nothing? So what exactly is the shlamim all about? So Rabbi Rais ben Shlita once mentioned a fascinating comment of the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim in our Parshas writes, says, "V'hikriv mizebech hashlamim mishel Hashem." You're going to bring a korban of shlamim to Hashem, and what is included? Primarily the chaylev. Hachil v'amachas hazakerev es kol achir v'asher al hakerev. There are different fats that are brought as part of the korban, and it's different than other korbanos. Why is it that the fats are a primary part of the hakrava, of the bringing of the korban shlamim? Says the Baal HaTurim, "Livi sheba lechaper achet sheba machmas rov shumno." What the korban is shlamim is coming to be mechaper for is not a specific act. It's an attitude. It's the person who has fattened up himself too much, gotten a little bit too comfortable, and that's led one away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. From the language of Vayishman Yeshurun, that we became fat vayivad and we pushed away HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What leads a person sometimes to not fulfill the essay? I don't have time for this. It's not primary. It's a certain attitude, and that perhaps is what the korban shlamim is about. The korban shlamim is not mechaper kulei hai because it is not on a specific avera, and that is why the Rambam tells us that you're not going to do vidoy, because vidoy has to be specific. This is on a certain attitude, and yet Rashi tells us that what the korban primarily is about is being matil shalom, is creating peace. You see, when we have the perspective and we make sure that no matter how successful we might be, that we don't allow ourselves to be overly fattened and allow our physical success to push us away spiritually, that's what brings us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Korban Shelamim is not inherently about kapara, but it's about making sure that our spiritual compass is turned towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even when things are successful for us in the physical world in which we dwell, is that we shouldn't dwell on those, and we shouldn't push aside that which is spiritual. So the Korban Shelamim brings about a certain kapara, but it's on an attitude. And that reminds us who are learning about the Korban Shelamim to always remember that primary in our lives is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Primary in our lives is our ruchnius. And no matter what else happens around us, to make sure that we are always focused on our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.